Anyway, since we seem to be out of witnesses, I thought I'd drink a little.
Okay, I'm going to report to the computer. There. Here we are.
Hi, everybody.
Wednesday afternoon. Straight Luck Cocktail. Forgot our name just for half a second. It's been a long day.
Quite a Wednesday for you.
In the office, and we're in kind of a suit, no tie, but office around me. You're at the home office.
Home office, pictures of nieces and nephews behind me, and somebody else over on that side. And
so you're having a drink of some kind?
yeah, I'm having a whiskey sour again, same as last week. It's kind of nice out and nice summer drink, so that's what I'm doing.
There you go. I am having a 3-week old Blizzard from the freezer.
Well, that's interesting. Who would have left that there?
I don't know.
It was probably a handsome coworker of yours.
It's disgusting.
An adorable, loving
We
coworker.
have 2 rock-hard frozen Blizzards in our office freezer because Tyler insists on buying 2 because it's a good deal, and he never eats them or drinks them or whatever you do with a Blizzard. No,
To me, it's important to have one to consume and one backup.
I'm drinking an old-fashioned
Oh, nice.
bourbon old-fashioned.
And do you have a garnish in there? Do you got a little, was that a little peel or something in there? What is that?
No, we don't have any peels in the office. I'm making do.
All right, well, you could put some Blizzard in there.
Yeah. So, we'll head in here.
There you are.
Got the, I had the camera originally set up on our television in our office.
Yeah.
But it was just too broad, and then you can see the bald spot on the top of my head. My vanity doesn't allow for that. So here we are. So what are we talking about today?
I don't know. You said this is your topic. You said
Yeah. So
what makes us us, sort of.
Yeah. So I mean, our podcast kind of veers around into different things. Sometimes they're specific and informative, and sometimes they're more esoteric. And the thing that struck me this morning, for a few reasons, is this idea of lawyers as human beings, which is something that even I, as a lawyer for 35 years, question at times. Are we really?
What the hell are you talking about?
Or are we some sort of freakish alien hybrid? That sort of morphs, our humanity morphs out of us once we get called to the bar. Because before we were lawyers, we were something else. And so I thought it'd be curious to talk about, well, what were we? What did you do before you were a lawyer? What makes the pre-lawyer Tyler Pollack?
All right, sure. Do you mean professionally?
No, whatever.
All right, whatever.
Nobody cares about whether you're
No.
the man on campus in high school. So
Right.
just sort of ignore that.
Yeah.
Although we can talk about high school hijinks if you wanted to. But I was more curious, what our job experiences were like, and whether we did things for a living that led us to this profession. And if we didn't, whether those things still have a latency or some sort of relevance to what we do today.
Okay, I'm going to back it up just a little about me. I grew up in a big family. I got 5 brothers and 2 sisters. We grew up in a small town just outside of Lethbridge. And I think that really kind of contributes to why I do what I do. 5 brothers. I'm on the lower end of the age category, and it was always a competitive kind of thing, right? So I think that's part of it. Is this sort of personality style, this competitive sort of perfectionist personality style, probably is suited well for that type of thing. Most of my older siblings did either trades or maybe more blue collar type work. I think that's true. Yeah, that's true. And and they've all been very, very successful at everything that they do. And I'm a twin, and so this is my rationale. I'm smaller than they are because I'm a twin. We are all a little smaller, and so
Are
we are
twins
born.
smaller?
Well,
Are you
I
trying
think
to
so. We're
suggest
born smaller. You're
that
born smaller for
twins
sure.
are little people?
Well, not little people, but I'm not a big guy, you know. So I'm not out there getting oil out of the ground or
So your
uh,
non-twin siblings are much larger than you are there?
oh geez, that's a good question. So there's actually two sets of twins, and then the other set of twins
Seriously.
aren't tiny people either. They're not little like me and my sister. Me and
You
my
have,
twin sister are a little bit smaller. Yeah.
so you have two twins in the same family.
Two sets of twins. Yeah. 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 Exactly.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So, and then of having a twin too, man, we're even more competitive. So, yeah,
Huh.
that's sort of kind of how I don't know, that's kind of my personality style. I think that's where it came from a little bit, this kind of competitive thing.
Hmm.
And then my parents got divorced when I was about 10. So there was that sort of, I think, contributed to this idea. You know, I'm starting to grow up, not a little kid, is almost becoming a teen, seeing the world a little bit more. And you see this kind of horrible dispute between your parents, and I think it hit me at that point. I was pretty sure about 10 years old, maybe 11, something like that, that I thought, oh man, this world could use lawyers who kind of care a little bit. And so I always try and think that I care a little bit, yeah, hopefully I do. So yeah, so I think that's sort of where I come from. And then professionally, you know, my jobs were always, it doesn't matter what I did. I mean, I worked in a grocery store forever. I was a janitor for a little while. I did a few odd jobs, but I was always a salesman. Didn't matter what I was doing. It was a sales job. It was always how do I sell my services or whatever I'm doing to the employer that I had. So at the grocery store, it wasn't about making sales to the customer maybe as much as it was about you know, selling myself as an employee to management and to my colleagues and whatever. And and then I did sales for Coca-Cola for a while, and I did sales for an insurance company as an insurance agent for a while. So I feel like sales has always been, you know, that sort of competitive nature too is built into it. I think that makes a person it gives it's a similar skill set to what a litigator might need to be able to think on their feet, to be able to generate interest in an outcome, things like that. So
Hmm.
that's me. I don't know what else to tell you. I think that's why I do what I do, and it's kind of where I come from.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
And as we've discovered, we didn't know this when we hired you, being a former employee, now partner. We both worked at Safeway at different times,
that's right. Yeah,
which is kind of hilarious. Um, I worked there 5 years. How long did you work at Safeway?
just about 10.
Really? Oh
Yeah,
my
just about
Lord.
10 years.
5 years
Uh,
seemed like a long time to me.
10 was a very long time. But I started when I was like 14 or something,
I
15. I don't know.
started when I was 15 or 16. I think I was 16 when I started. My first job was a busboy in an Italian restaurant. I did that for a summer basically.
Oh, cool.
And that was chaos because everybody was Italian and family, except for two busboys and a couple of waiters.
Yeah.
But then there were two or three waiters that were nephews and relatives, and the cooking staff were all relatives, and the owners were, you know, obviously Italian, and that was educating. Again, kind of like what you say, it's a service industry. Although when you're 14 or 15 years old, you just kind of want to get paid and avoid being abused to the extent possible. And I think your vision of customer service is maybe a little lacking because of your maturity. I did have a job while I was a busboy at the same time, cleaning tallow tanks for a meat packing plant, an abattoir, if you were, where basically these standing rail cars get full of all the ground up entrails that they don't use, guts and sinew and crap, and they put it in these rail cars, and then it congeals like, you know, hard pudding, and they got to clean out. So what they do is they pump these tanks full of steam for a couple days, And then they send a couple idiots in with a vacuum hose, like a septic truck. And you just stand in this stuff kind of almost up to your waist, and you suck it all into these vacuum trucks in temperatures that are like 120 degrees.
Well, you earned that money.
And then you smell brutal for days because you can't take enough showers to get rid of that. So that, made me appreciate maybe what sitting in an office is. So I did that. I was a busboy, worked at Safeway, worked at a garden center for a little while, basically just doing labor. Picked cherries. My grandpa was a fruit farmer.
Yeah, I
In
remember you saying that.
Okanagan. Picked cherries when they were in season. Moved some sprinkler for him, more or less just casually. And I didn't have any epiphany like you about being a lawyer, even though my mother was a clerk of family court, oddly enough.
Oh, wow.
And I was around the courthouse growing up, from young. I wasn't that interested, to be honest. I went to law school mostly because I initially thought I was going to be a teacher. And then during a practicum, I sat in a staff room for, days and realized
I'm nervous. What are you going to say?
I didn't want to work in this profession. These people were not all of them, but a bunch of them were just bitter and angry, and they seemed to hate children. And I was like, I can't do this for a living. I can't deal with this. So I wrote my LSAT and got accepted to law school. So I was like, okay, let's try that out.
And you didn't even have to finish your degree. You got accepted after 3 years.
Yeah. Again, I don't know why. And it got accepted to UBC, even though I wanted to go to Saskatchewan or Edmonton. But, when someone says, would you like to live in Vancouver for 3 years instead of Southern Alberta? Yeah, sign me
Hell
up.
yeah.
So that's what I did. And then during law school, I worked summers at a thing called Lethbridge Legal Guidance, which is still here, but it's not quite the same. But it paid pretty much as articling, and you had no boss. We ran it ourselves, ran a whole shitload of trials as a non-lawyer, which was interesting.
Yeah, totally.
Criminal trials, a couple civil trials. But the thing that kind of, I don't know, I hope has never left me. I've worked this for 35 years, and all sorts of clients come to see me from all sorts of backgrounds. And I still have a great appreciation for the wisdom of, my parents and my grandparents, none of whom were, what I would call professionals. My mother was the closest thing because she worked in the court system, but my dad was a postal worker. My grandfather on his side, he delivered mail as well. My grandma was a teacher. On my other side, my grandparents were farmers in the Okanagan. In having done some physical labor and done, I guess, what you'd call menial jobs, I have a great respect for people that do those things. They're not easy. They're stressful in their own way. And there's a wisdom to it, especially farmers. I love farmers because they do something that seems so miraculous to me, right? Which is they take something like dirt and seeds and turn it into food that feeds everybody. And I find that really interesting. And it's so technical in so many ways. And so that I find kind of interesting. And so that's kind of what struck me about today's topic is as lawyers, we exist in this myth of superiority or some bullshit like that. We speak a language that other people don't understand. And the reams and reams of statutes and regulations, and there's more every day, we pour through those and we learn how to read them quickly and with a discerning eye. and it's like we get to speak a special language, and we're part of this closed fraternity, one of the few still in society that really has its own odd monopoly of
Hmm.
sorts.
Yeah.
Um, and my sense is, and I think even in myself, I get it occasionally, is there's an arrogance that infects us sometimes, and it would behoove us to remember what it was like before we did what we did. And that's kind of what I want to, you know, do you feel that still? Do you, like, you've been doing it not nearly as long as me, but do you feel this sense of wanting to maintain your feet on the ground of not being a lawyer?
Maybe I'm starting to figure out what this topic is. Yeah, yeah. I grew up fine, uh, and ended up living on my own without not in my parents' house pretty early, about 15 years old, and I lived very, very poor. And yeah, there is yeah. I've got this sense that I think I can appreciate that people come from where I come from. There's a lot of lawyers out there, doctors, professionals generally, that they're doing what their parents did or their uncle or was close to that or whatever. And I always feel like I'm kind of the odd man out, even when I went to law school a whole year, and maybe even still. I feel, and you know what? Yeah, I do. I feel like I don't fit in. This isn't me. I was worried that whole first year of law school, someone was going to come up and say, "Oh, no, we didn't mean to accept you. You weren't supposed to be here." I still have dreams where I get notice that they counted my credits wrong in high school, and I never should be able to get into university, never into law school, and I got to go back and fix all that. I definitely feel like I don't quite fit in, and I feel like I've got this connection to these people that are still part of my life. I lived in a very poor trailer park for quite a few years going through school, and I rented it. There's 2 bedrooms and then this little room that was like a big closet, and I lived in the closet. I had a bunk bed. I had maybe this much room on my bunk bed, and I couldn't even do a full turnover in that bed. I had to just sneak in either on my belly or on my back and sleep that way. That was my commitment. And I had my desk underneath and my dresser beside it, and I rented the other rooms out, just trying to make a go of things so that I could try and work less, so I could get good enough grades to get into law school. And those people are my people. They have my wedding pictures in their houses still. Uh, when they got problems, they have my cell and they phone me, and I feel like that's where I come from. I feel like, and I'm not trying to be righteous about it or anything. I just feel like that's my connection. That's kind of where I come from. And so when people are dealing with things that are important to them, I try and make sure it doesn't escape me that that is so important to them, whether they're fighting over $100 or $100,000 or $1 million. That's their important thing, whether it's parenting or child support or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most important thing in their life right now, and they're entrusting me to take care of that for them. And while I can't accept responsibility for what a court might do or what their partner might do, um, I do my damnedest to take care of them. That's for sure.
And the irony is, I don't know if it's irony exactly, but when we hired you, I remember specifically that being a significant factor, is the sense of personal responsibility that you undertook from young to take care of yourself.
Mm.
Um, and it's interesting. I read a recruiting article a while ago, and a high-level recruiter for large law firms in the U.S. said the best predictor of what a good lawyer will be is whether or not they have any blue-collar work experience.
Wow.
Right? And
Yeah,
it
that's
struck true to me because I have the same sense when I meet lawyers. If they've come from a privileged background, they might be incredibly bright, but if you were in a foxhole with them, you'd question just how strong they could be when the chips were down.
yeah.
Whereas when you meet or you get to know lawyers that have what I would call a more modest or even a difficult background, there is a sense of the ability to work through adversity, which I think's got some value. Here's the irony. I got to tell you a story. I don't know if I've told you this before. When you talk about having these dreams that you're a credit short.
Yeah.
When I was in third year law school, you have one of those nightmares where you wake up and you go, I don't think I have enough credits to graduate, right? So the first term of third year, fall, in November, I have that dream and I literally wake up and start counting all my credits. And I realize that I'm a course short of being able to graduate based on my calendar.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
So your nightmare was my reality. So, and I'm betraying my ignorance here, but so the next morning or that morning, I freak out and I go to the registrar's office and I go, I don't have enough credits. I need to pick up a course. And they say, no, you're fine. You've got all the credits you need. And I go, no, I've counted them out. Well, apparently, and this is the nightmare, which was my reality. In mid-November, I discover that there was a course that I was registered in that I had never attended.
Whoa.
Advanced Criminal Procedure with a guy named Jerome Atrins. I remember this because he wrote the text on it. And I was like, oh my God. And the drop date had long passed, you know. So I'm like, well, what do I do? I'm going to get a 0 in this class. I'm not going to graduate. And the registrar said, look, we understand your mistake. And if you want, you can drop it without prejudice and you can pick up another course in the spring. But my spring was already fairly busy. They said, or if you want, you could catch up. So I showed up in class the next day for the first time. and I always sat in the front row because I had this theory that I could learn by osmosis what I couldn't learn by actually paying attention. And I remember showing up, and my roommate was actually in that class.
Oh, shit.
And he looked at me like, what are you doing here? And actually, Professor Atrins, he walked right up to me and goes, I don't think you're in the right place. I said, no, I am.
Little do you know, Professor.
Yeah. So I stuck it out and managed to get through. So your nightmare was my reality in third year. And
That's scary.
but you learn these lessons, right? Which is you can do things that you didn't think you could do when you have to do them.
Yep.
Right. Ironically, my best mark that term was in advanced criminal procedure, probably because I read all the materials in the space of 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And so it kind of stuck with me, I guess. But so it's kind of funny.
Scary.
And then the other thing that struck me, you know, in today, I got divorced. You talked about your parents' divorce. I got divorced in '93. And it was a little bit traumatic for me. And while I was going through it, I was looking for some self-help books. And I came across a book completely by accident. I think it was called The Problem with Lawyers or The Trouble with Lawyers. And one of the things they talked about, and it kind of relates to what we're talking about, was lawyers, if they're not careful, they become these moral relativists. And then that carries into their personal lives. And they learn to argue any given case, no matter how ridiculous. And then they carry that into the personal life. So if you and I have a disagreement, the problem with lawyers is we get convinced of our rightness. And if we're good at what we do, we can justify to ourselves why your position has no merit. And it doesn't necessarily make for a good partnership or a good spouse. And I've always been a little cognizant of that not everything is relative. Sometimes, particularly the things we do individually, sometimes we make bad decisions or we do things that aren't necessarily good. And I think, again, it behooves us as lawyers not just to be humble about our backgrounds, but to remember that we're not infallible, that if we're not careful, you know, everything's arguable. So no matter what I do, let me explain to you why it's
Hmm.
okay. Well, no,
Yeah.
sometimes, you know, you got to acknowledge your errors. And I think that's something that is sometimes lacking in our profession a little bit. Like, do you get that sense?
Yeah. And maybe I get it in two ways. I mean, professionally, right? When you're getting lawyers' files transferred to you or transferred out or whatever, there's always this thing where you're got to look at that client in the eye and say, well, here's where you're at. And maybe there's an error or an issue, and here's where you should be. And so it kind of gives you that arrogance, but you're always consistently second guessing what this other lawyer is doing. Or if you're fighting with the other lawyer, you're always kind of second guessing, well, what are they doing? Should they be doing something different? What would be their best play? So in that sense, yeah, for sure, right? Where you're always professionally at work, I'm always trying to figure out what's the other guy doing or what has he done where he or she shouldn't have or whatever. But then on the other side, personally, yeah, I mean, I think it's hard. You know, I'm in my early 30s, and here I am giving advice to very wealthy business people about their finances and about how to divide things or what to do. Or I'm doing mediations, and my mediation practice is getting bigger and better. And I'm sitting here dealing with very sophisticated people who are older, smarter than I, and trying to help them sort out their issues. And then I turn around and you know, go into the kitchen, and my wife and I are trying to figure out what to make for dinner or whatever. And it's like, well, maybe I should have been on that earlier. Maybe I should have done something different, or I should have helped the kids, or I should have, whatever, right?
Or maybe
And
she's making a hamburger helper. You should go, thank you, dear.
yeah, well, for our viewers who don't know, I don't love Hamburger Helper.
Inside joke.
It's an inside joke relating to probably the biggest fight my wife and I ever had. I should admit it. I'm wrong. I was a jerk. She made some Hamburger Helper, and instead of being happy that dinner was made and me and my kids were fed, I went to Max and I got a hot dog. Something I regret deeply, but we can laugh about now, I hope.
Yes, yes.
So, yeah, no, I think it is tough. It is tough for sure. I should be better at that, probably owning up to my responsibilities and my errors and what I could do better. Yeah, it is tough. It's a weird thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fine line sometimes, you know. I've told my wife I'm never going to apologize unless I actually believe I'm wrong, right? Because the
I
idea
don't know if
of
that's
treating
wise.
somebody with a phony apology is problematic. But at the same time, because, you know, legal egos and the way we do what we do is, if you're not careful, you know, everything seems right. And
Yeah.
so we'll have an argument and I'll say, I need to take some time to think about this.
Oh, good.
And
Wow.
more often than not, she has a pretty good point because I'm kind of a dick sometimes. And I can go, yeah, you know what? I think this is what I'm hearing. And this is why I wasn't really owning it initially. This is what was getting, you know, so it's that, not just saying, yeah, I apologize, but explaining why it took me a while to get to that point.
You know
Uh,
what's really helped me with that is appreciating that there's another side. And
yeah.
when you're a lawyer, you know, everything is taught and trained into us that you got to advocate for your side and fight for your people. And the one thing that the piece of training I got that really helped me move away from that was my mediation training, and maybe a little bit of my collaborative law training.
Mm-hmm.
But the mediation training really makes a person think away from these sort of positional ideas that there's a right and there's a wrong, and one person wants something, and you know, and the other person wants something different, and so winner takes all. And it moves you into this situation where you're trying to think about people's interests and what do they really want, and what kind of resources people have, and how can you resolve everything and make everybody as happy, or at least equally not as happy with the resources they've got. So I think that's helped me. My mediation training was
Yeah, I think
huge in
that's a
that.
good point. You know, I did a ton of collaborative law training, and I found that the restating and affirming and understanding the other person's position is so powerful, because sometimes we just want to be heard to begin with.
Yeah.
And so I learned in collaborative, you know, saying to somebody, So what I hear you saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that your concern is this. So not asserting your own interests or your client's interests at all,
Yeah.
but trying to make it clear or make sure that you do truthfully understand what the complaint is before you respond to it. And sometimes that has an incredible effect on the conflict, the person just realizing that you've actually listened to them, even if you haven't preferred an apology or a solution. And I've seen it in mediation and collab for sure, but in your own personal conflicts, it's a really helpful thing, you know.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Somebody, so you're upset because of this. And sometimes they'll go, no, you ass. I'm not upset about that at all. It's this. And you're like, oh, right? Because we make assumptions, I think, sometimes of
Yeah.
other people's, what we see as irrational anger.
And you
And
know
it
what?
turns
Even
out,
if,
oh, you know, it wasn't
yeah.
that
And you know
dumb.
what? Even if you perceive that their position is stupid or wrong or not something to be worried about, at least when you do that kind of discovery, you're finding out what's real to them. And that sure makes a difference. So
Yeah.
both personally and professionally, yeah, that training has helped me a lot. Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah. And I think for it to be really effective, both in your personal sort of endeavors, but also as a lawyer, it has to be sincere, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a collab where somebody's restating and they really don't give a shit? You know, they use the words. So what you're saying is you want my client to pay you more money.
Yeah, I hear that
Right?
lots.
Well, no, that's not at all. What you're saying is you have concern about your capacity to support yourself and your children based on these factors. That's your concern, right? It's not about my client giving more. It's about you feeling like you're you're secure. But you'll get lawyers that it's just
Positional for them. Yeah.
yeah, it's going through the motions, but and then the person, they don't even sometimes understand, yeah, that's it. I want your client to pay me more money.
Right.
And then you find yourself as the other lawyer saying, well, it's not, I think that oversimplifies. It's not the money, it's the reasonable allocation of resources to provide each party, you know, some stability as we go forward. Um, yeah, that's it, right? So it's
Yeah.
yeah. So it's an interesting thing, you know. I'm getting to, you know, closer to the end of my career, and you still find yourself looking in a mirror and feeling quasi fraudulent, like uh, just what you said. But still, 35 years later, I'm giving people advice, and I'm a flawed human being. You know, I don't know as much as I act like I know sometimes. And that humility is frightening sometimes when you realize, you know, that in some respects, I don't feel any more intelligent than I was as a grocery clerk at Safeway, you know, putting apples on a shelf.
Yeah.
You're still this basic same person.
Yeah.
You've
Yeah.
got some more life experience behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I wanted to chat about that. I thought it was kind of interesting. I think sometimes, you know, the public looks at lawyers like a monolith of some kind. And I don't think we're alone. I don't want to think we're special because, you know, we realize that we're flawed or that we, you know, have to have some humility. But I think, you know, the persona that we sort of send out there sometimes seems like that we're a little better than everybody else. Well,
You know what though? That sells, and that's almost what's in demand, right? Like if you were to
yeah.
see a litigator in the courthouse bathroom crying or throwing up before a hearing, you would think maybe that's not the kind of guy I want to hire.
Yeah,
People do
right.
that.
But it's a funny thing, right? I mean, you know, I talked about the jobs before law school when I was a legal guidance. I wasn't even a lawyer. You know, I remember doing a trial in Pincher Creek on a summary conviction thing, and the judge berated me about not understanding. There was a case called Hodges case, the rule of relating to circumstantial evidence, and and I'm a nobody. I'm not even a lawyer.
Right.
And the judge, maybe Mr. Harvey, you're not aware of the Rule and Hodges case, blah, blah, blah. And as a non-lawyer, I looked at this judge who was a senior judge, and I said, yeah, I'm aware of the Rule and Hodges case, Your Honor, and the correct interpretation is this, right? So for a litigator, as much as, we're talking about humility, when you're in that courtroom, you
You're not
need to
supposed to show
be
that.
assertive and aggressive, and you can't
Confident.
take any quarter at times.
Yeah.
And that's partly what the client pays for too,
Hmm.
which is I can't dither when I'm making argument and be as direct as possible maybe about the shortcomings of my case. I have to present it in a way that appears to be, I'm supremely confident that if you don't buy the case that I'm making, you're making a huge mistake. So you're right. It's this
Yeah.
weird Jekyll and Hyde thing where I think we need to maintain our humility and our understanding of our flaws. But when the chips are down, and particularly in a courtroom, that's not the time to tell a judge you're not really sure if whether the case you're making has merit or not.
That's not the time to waver. Yeah.
But at the same time, right? I've heard people complain about lawyers that make asinine arguments in front of judges, and I've heard judges complain about that. And so I think there is a time and a place to acknowledge the difficulty of your argument.
Yeah.
I understand that this argument may appear, to lack merit, sir. But this is why I think it has merit. This is why, in fact, I think it should carry the day. So you're acknowledging this doubt that they're going to have, and particularly in a case that's difficult. And then you say, let me explain to you why this case deserves consideration.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that's more powerful than bowling through like you have no problems.
Yeah.
The judge can go, yeah, you're right. I thought initially you were full of shit, but now I'm starting to see why I might want to think about this for a minute. So yeah, it's what we do is weird. I mean, it's just,
It's weird.
performance art almost in some respects,
Yep.
and technical application of skill. Yeah,
Knowledge. Yeah.
it's a strange road. There on Twitter yesterday, some girl, a woman, her first day of articles.
Oh.
She had a picture of herself, and this is me going to my first day of articles. And I just said, enjoy the journey. It's amazing. And I don't know how you're feeling, in the first, inside the first decade for sure. But
Feeling amazed. It is amazing. Yeah.
it's never boring. It's never enough time in the day.
Nope.
And there's all these weird balances that we have in terms of wanting to be better at what we do, but not letting that skill set lead to arrogance, or worse, a lack of empathy, particularly for our clients. It's an interesting balance.
You know what though? There's got to be some, I think, detachment where I don't have to own my client's problems, but I think you're right. You don't want to have that lack of empathy. You need to be empathetic. You need to know that what that you're dealing with is the most important thing in your client's life right now. It's all they think about. They're losing sleep over it. And I might have 70 or 80 of these clients, but this is important to this one. And while you need to know that you have to have that empathy, you can't let it eat you up either, right? You can't own that.
No, yeah, because that leads to so many problems. I mean,
Yeah.
our own mental, physical health.
Yeah.
We have a colleague right now that suffered a stroke and a heart attack, and I heard that she's doing better. But
Yeah.
whether that relates to stress of the job or not, it's hard to.
It's hard to hear it because it hits home. Because
Yeah.
when I heard it, I feel like, man, that's the lawyer's fate. That's
Yeah. So you got high stress, which can lead to those kinds of outcomes. You've got, if you connect too closely with your client, that leads people to take ethical shortcuts.
yes.
the ends justify the means, right? If I need to lie and cheat to make sure my client is successful, um, that's a problem.
Yeah, I've seen lawyers do it, right? I've been doing this
Yeah. I've seen
between,
it.
yeah.
I've seen it over and
Yeah.
over again from some
Yep.
counsel.
Yeah.
And, and I think you're right, empathy, but detachment. I can't own my client's problem,
It's a balance.
but I have to understand the importance of that problem to them.
Yeah.
It's, I'm glad I'm not a teacher. I don't regret my shift in career goals. Probably now more than ever.
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, it's an interesting path we've made for ourselves, Tyler. I hope you enjoy it 35 years into your career as much as I have.
Here's hoping.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how long we've been doing this.
I don't know. We should let these people go.
Yeah. So anyway, it's been an interesting conversation this afternoon. Are you working tomorrow in the office?
Yes.
No. You look concerned about the COVID still.
COVID numbers have gone up and up and up, and
they went down.
Yeah.
They went down in Alberta yesterday.
Oh, well, no, not exactly. They went. Yeah, the increase wasn't as large. How about that? That's the way we should put it. The increase wasn't as big.
We have fewer active COVID cases today than we had 2 days ago.
Okay, maybe it went down over the span of 2 days. No, I'm not. Yeah, you know what? I am extremely effective working from this office, and I'm going to keep doing it for now. Plus, I got this really new cool headset for.
I know.
Yeah. I look like one of those football coaches.
I bought a new pair of Turtle Beach because my other one's broke.
What were you doing that they broke?
Pardon?
What were you doing that they broke? Was it a Call of Duty upset?
No, they get old. But so this evening, I'm enjoying the new update to Call of Duty. You can jump on trains and go around the map on the train, shoot people. It's entertaining. It's a diversion from my litigation world. So you're gonna have to get Call of Duty.
Yeah, I got the headset finally. You know what though? I've only ever played on Nintendo systems, so I think that I might be really silly trying to compete in that realm.
The Xbox X is coming out in November.
Well, maybe. I don't know.
I'm thinking that there's got to be some justification for buying those through the office.
I'm not opposed to that, except I don't ever go to the office anymore. I'm playing it safe at home.
I get distracted at home enough.
Yeah, let's put an Xbox at the office.
I'm going to let you go. Have a pleasant evening.
Goodbye, everybody.
Ciao.